Karen says she's the owner's wife, but I'm the owner. I've never had much patience for busy days at the restaurant, but that Saturday was particularly chaotic. It was the kind of day where the smell of fried food and sweets mixed with the constant noise of people talking, chairs scraping, and orders being taken. I was at the counter, helping serve when Karen walked in. She didn't ask for permission, didn't look at anyone, she just walked in with that authoritative stride, her designer handbag swinging on her arm. She seemed oblivious to the commotion around her, as if the world simply had to adjust to her presence. The restaurant was already packed, and the few available chairs were occupied by people waiting for their tables. Karen, however, didn't seem interested in waiting. I glanced around quickly, noticing no one had approached her yet. I knew this wasn't going to end well, but I went to assist, as I always did with any customer. Before I could say anything, she turned to me with an impatient expression. "How long is this going to take?" she asked, not even bothering with a greeting. "We're a bit busy today." "It'll take about 20 minutes, I replied, staying calm. She sighed, visibly irritated, and threw herself into one of the waiting chairs. Her son, a boy around 13, immediately started running through the restaurant, pushing chairs, bumping into customers, as if the place was a playground. I tried to ignore it for a few minutes, but soon it became impossible not to notice the reactions of the people around. They looked at me, expecting me to do something. The mother, of course, was glued to her phone, indifferent to the chaos her son was causing. I decided to act. I crossed the room and, without much ceremony, grabbed the boy by the arm as he ran past. "You need to stop running in here. You're bothering the other customers," I said, trying to keep my tone firm but not aggressive. The boy looked at me, startled, and ran back to his mother, crying as if I'd done something far worse. That's when the real trouble started. The woman stood up like a lioness defending her cub. Her eyes seemed to shoot sparks as she marched over to me. "How dare you touch my son?" she screamed, drawing the attention of everyone in the restaurant. I was used to dealing with difficult customers, but her level of aggression caught me off guard. "He was running and disturbing the other customers, ma'am." "I just asked him to stop," I explained, staying calm. "He's a child. Children do that. And you have no right to talk to him that way," she continued, not leaving any room for explanation. Then she dropped the bomb that changed everything. "Do you know who I am? I'm the wife of the owner of this place, and I'll make sure you lose your job for this." I held back a laugh, but my heart raced. I'd dealt with entitled people before, but this was new. Not only was she blatantly lying, but she also thought she could intimidate anyone with that story. "Oh, really?" I said, trying to sound as neutral as possible. "I apologize then. I didn't know you were married to the owner." She turned, apparently satisfied, and headed to the counter to speak with the manager. Little did she know, the manager was my father, the actual owner of the restaurant. I stayed back, curious to see how things would unfold. The restaurant was now silent, with everyone around watching to see what would happen. My father emerged from the office with his usual calm demeanor, not in any hurry. When he reached the counter, Karen began unloading her fury. "Your employee was extremely rude to my son. He touched him without permission and spoke to him in an unacceptable manner. I want him fired now." My father, who had already figured out the situation, remained calm. "I'm sorry for the inconvenience, ma'am, but we can't just fire an employee without cause." "Could you explain exactly what happened?" he asked, already knowing her response would be a parade of lies. "I already told you," she exclaimed. "I'm the wife of the owner of this place. I demand that he be fired immediately, or I'll make sure this restaurant never gets any good customers again." That's when my father, with a small smile at the corner of his lips, decided to end the charade. "Ma'am, I am the owner of this restaurant," he said, calmly. "And the young man you want fired is my son." Her face turned pale, as if all the blood had drained from it in seconds. She looked at me, in disbelief, as if she couldn't believe what she was hearing. Her son, still sniffling, tugged at her jacket sleeve, but she was frozen, speechless. Karen was in shock. It was clear she didn't know how to react, as if the ground had been pulled out from under her. The entire restaurant was now watching her in silence, waiting for her next move. My father's subtle smile was the final touch. He already knew how it would end, but chose to remain polite. "We can offer a refund for your order if you'd like." "I think that would settle the inconvenience," he suggested, his voice calm, almost as if he were speaking to an old friend. She was still processing the information, but the reaction was inevitable. I don't want your refund," she said, her voice trembling. This is absurd." Her son, still clutching her sleeve, began tugging her toward the door, quietly whining that he wanted to leave. But she couldn't walk out like that, not after being exposed in front of everyone. "You'll hear from me," she said, in one last attempt to maintain her posture, before leaving the restaurant, dragging her son behind her. The glass doors closed behind them, and for a few seconds, the silence persisted. I couldn't hold back the laughter. My father looked at me with the expression of someone who had seen this kind of thing many times before and simply shook his head. "These things happen, son. Don't worry," he said, and went back to his office, as if nothing had happened. I, however, couldn't help but find the whole situation hilarious. The restaurant slowly came back to life, conversations resumed, and the usual clatter of dishes being served echoed. My friends, who were sitting at a corner table, came over to me, laughing about the situation. "Man, did you see her face? Priceless," one of them said, still laughing. "She really thought she was going to get you fired." For a while, the incident became a running joke among us. My friends couldn't stop bringing up the look on her face when my father revealed he was the owner. But for me, it was a clear lesson in how people act when they think they have power. It wasn't the first time someone had tried to use a lie to get what they wanted at the restaurant, and it certainly wouldn't be the last. In the days that followed, things went back to normal. The restaurant continued to serve its regular customers, weekend crowds were the same, and I kept helping out when I could, earning my tips and the pay my father gave me for my hours of work. Occasionally, I found myself thinking about Karen and how she left with her pride wounded. A week later, I was back at work when one of the staff came over to me, looking concerned. "That woman is back," he said, discreetly pointing toward the door. I looked in the direction he indicated and, sure enough, Karen was there again, with the same air of superiority. But this time, she was alone, without her son in tow. My first instinct was to laugh. What could she possibly want now, after everything? She walked through the tables with her head held high and came straight to the counter, where I was. "I want to speak to the owner," she said, without any formality. I could have called my father, but I decided to see how far this would go. "He's busy at the moment. Can I help you with something?" I asked, keeping my tone polite but with a hint of teasing. She looked at me for a moment, her eyes scrutinizing every detail of my face, as if trying to decide whether I was worth her time. "I came to clear up the misunderstanding from last time," she began, her voice firm. "I may not be the owner's wife, but I know important people, and I didn't appreciate the way I was treated." I fought the urge to laugh again. The attempt to maintain an air of authority was almost pathetic. "I see," I replied, still calm. "I can call the owner to discuss this, but as has already been explained, I'm his son. If something bothered you, you can tell me now." She seemed surprised that I was so calm but pressed on. Maybe I overreacted, but you were rude to my son. And I don't think that's acceptable." She was trying to find a way to regain control, but it was too late. What had once seemed like a threat now sounded like a desperate attempt to save face. I took a deep breath and spoke, more seriously this time. "Ma'am, I asked your son to stop bothering the other customers because he was disrupting the restaurant. It wasn't personal. But if that offended you, I apologize." For a moment, she was at a loss for words. There was nothing more to say. She hadn't been able to intimidate me, hadn't been able to lie about her relationship with the owner, and now, she was being treated like any other customer. Her face softened slightly, as if she finally understood that her usual tactics weren't working. "Well, I appreciate the apology," she said, after a long pause. Then, without further ado, she turned and left the restaurant, for what I hoped would be the last time. As the glass doors closed behind her, I let out a sigh of relief. Maybe she'd learned a lesson, maybe she hadn't. But I'd certainly learned mine. Some people will go to great lengths to make themselves feel important, even if it means fabricating a story that falls apart as soon as it's questioned. The restaurant buzzed back to life as I resumed my shift, and for the first time in days, I allowed myself to laugh at the absurdity of it all. Enjoyed the story? Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications for more. Drop a comment with your thoughts or ideas for the next one. See you in the next video.